Welcome to Netaji Subhash Open University. We are discussing on the application of goods and services tax and the point of levy of taxation in respect of goods and services tax. Friends, we have discussed on this issue that goods and services tax is precisely determined based on the place of supply or point of supply. And this supply, it represents the word both sale as well as services. The fundamental conception, it says that if a supply is made, supply of goods is made, it should be taxed based on the principle of destination based consumption tax. In other words, if it is a goods and if it is supplied from one state to the another state, in the state in which it is going to be consumed shall be treated as a place of supply, and tax would be levied in that particular state. I will explain this matter slightly now in detail subsequently. However, in case of services, supply of services, there are certain exceptions, and the supply of services may be considered as a place where the supply is actually performed. Why this chapter is so important? Because we know there is a central goods and service tax, there is a state goods and service tax, there is an interstate goods and services tax. The rate remains same. That means on a particular product, if the rate of tax is 18% and the goods is sold from one part of a state to the another part of the same state, then the rate of tax shall be 18% only, breaking up into two, called as CG, central goods 9%, and state goods tax 9%. 9 plus 9 becomes 18%. Good. However, if the goods are traveling from one state to another state, say from Gujarat, the goods is coming to West Bengal, and in West Bengal the goods are ultimately going to be consumed, it will be treated as a interstate goods and services tax. The rate remains 18%. The fundamental conception of GST, it says that unless the goods or the services are specifically exempted and mentioned in the particular schedule, like say schedule 3 of the tax, then only it will not be considered as a taxable element. Otherwise, any goods and services, even on a deemed consumption, it will be considered as a taxable services. So this levy of taxation and the taxability becomes very, very important, and it starts with a few words that who is the person is liable for collection, levy, deposit of taxes. The definition given in CGST Act, Central Goods and Services Tax Act, in 2 subsection 84 of the Act, and it includes an individual, a HUF, a company, a firm, a limited liability partnership, an association of person, body of individual, any corporation under any state central act, or any incorporated by under any of the laws of a country operating in our country, in India. So in other words, any person who is supplying a goods in Indian territory or providing a service in Indian territory is considered as a person, and that includes the government also, the government entities or government companies also, and should be considered as a supplier within the definition of section 105 of the CGST Act. And the moment we speak about such a supplier, the word includes an agent of that supplier or that person acting as such on behalf of such supplier in relation to goods or services or both goods and services. So, the law is very specific. The law says that if you are a supplier of goods or a supplier of services, any part of the country, or if you are an agent, right, or an establishment working under the principle, they all are treated as a supplier. There is another schedule which says that if I am a recipient of a service, but the service provider or the supply provider is from abroad, I am also liable for tax under a reverse charge mechanism. So, in the law, there is another conception called as reverse charge mechanism, and what reverse charge mechanism says that there may be situation under section 9 of the Act. It says that there may be certain supply of services or supply of goods where the person who is supplying is not actually paying the taxes or charging the taxes. The tax is being levied by, right, the tax is actually paid by the person who is actually taking the product or services. This conception is called as reverse charge, and the tax is levied on that reverse charge basis. There are few more issues in the levy. There may be a concept of job working or job work, and the job work says, like, the principal is giving the raw material to the job worker. Say a big shoe manufacturing company is providing the raw material, leather, shoes, sole, the adhesive, the design to the job worker, telling the job worker that you manufacture, you produce the shoe and giving it me back. This supply to the job worker does not, the supply does not return back to the principal within the time frame mentioned by the law, or even the machineries given by the principal to this job worker never returns back within the time frame of say 3 years. It will be considered as the levy of taxes. It will be considered as a supply and shall be levied with taxes. So far as this levy of taxes, one more interesting issues. That interesting issue called as the input service distribution and also the location and place. There are few exceptions to this concept. It concept says that if it is a hotel business or hospitality services and the person from another state is residing in my hotel in this particular state. Let's take example, Mr. X of West Bengal goes to Delhi and stays in a hotel in Delhi. Effectively or logically, it should have been IGST because the hotel owner providing service from Delhi to a person of West Bengal origin should have been IGST. But since the hotel being an is a immovable property located in the state of Delhi, the law has been further extended to say that that sort of a situation, it will be considered as the local taxes. That means it will be levied with Delhi SG, it will be levied with Delhi CG, and 9 plus 9, if the 18% is the tax rate, 9 plus 9, 18% shall be taxed. Right. This is the basic fundamental conception of the levy of taxation. Before we come to a close on this particular discussion, please remember and recall that the levy, point of levy, the point of accrual of this taxation becomes very important because depend on which your tax structure shall be determined, whether it will be SG, whether it will be CG, state goods and service tax, central goods and service tax, or should it be considered as interstate goods and services tax or union territory goods and services tax. That's very important. A cross reference, if your liability is IGST and you are depositing SGST, will land up into a trouble because that transfer may be a difficult proposition. Friends, we should be very careful while determining the concept of levy of taxation, the incidence of taxation, the place of taxation, the point of taxation, and then ultimate levy of tax on the GST law. Thank you for this session.